Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Sam Horn, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I've been looking forward to sharing some stories and ideas with your listeners.
Oh, I can't wait. Boy, this, when I just read the title of your book, I was like, Talking on Eggshells, Soft Skills for Hard Conversations. All right. The fact that you threw eggshells in there is one of the biggest pet peeves of mine. I refuse to ever walk on eggshells around people, but this is kind of where it starts for people, right? Not being able to speak up. Let's talk about, before we get into some of the details and some of the nuances of what you're teaching people here, how did you get to where you are having these conversations and coaching and helping people on them?
You know, I'm very fortunate is that I wrote a book called Tung Fu more than 20 years ago. And Tung Fu is how to deal with difficult people without becoming one yourself. And it really was based on my observations that a lot of people were taught math and science and history. We're not taught what to say when people are complaining or what to do if someone's accusing us of something that's not our fault. So I thought, let's write a book about what to say when we don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's a tough thing for people. And these are skills you can attain, just like I talk about with confidence. You know, with the confidence is really the sum of the thoughts you think and the actions you take. It can take some work, but everybody can get to the point where they feel like they can speak up instead of shutting down. I think we all have had that lump in our throat feeling, right? That getting choked up, that inability to speak, and it's awful. Let's talk, let's start with how would someone stop complainers, blamers, and shamers from targeting them? This is one of the chapters you focus on that. What are some tips there for people that are like, oh, I got people complaining to me all the time or blaming me or shaming me? How do we get people to stop targeting us if that's our pattern of, experience?
Well, I know you and I both believe in being pragmatic. So unless someone's driving in a car, get a piece of paper real quick, draw a vertical line down the center, and on top of the left, put words to lose. And on top of the right-hand column, put words to use. So let's talk about complaining. Over on the left, if people complain, don't explain, because explanations come across as excuses. If someone says, you were supposed to be here an hour ago. Oh, I know, I got caught in traffic. We think by explaining, they'll forgive us. No, they'll actually get angrier because they feel we're not being accountable. So over on the right, put the A train, A for agree, A for apologize, A for act. A for agree. You're right. I was supposed to be here an hour ago. A for apologize. And I'm sorry you ended up waiting so long. A for act. And I've got that information you had requested. If you want, we can jump right into it. Do you see how the A train expedites complaints? Explanations aggravate them.
Well, and that's the thing, is because sometimes when someone's explaining ill behavior, it might be the reason, but it just feels like an excuse. And it feels like they're almost blaming you for being upset that they didn't honor the thing, right? Like you're late or whatever the scenario is. And I'm like, hey, you're late. And then you go into a, 10-minute conversation as to why. That is infuriating for the person on the other end. I like how you just are going to directly get to it. Hey, just my fault, my bad, no excuse. Let's get into it now and moving forward, right? It's onward and upward. Otherwise, aren't you just simmering in there and now we're in a defensive argument?
Oh, what you just said is really the river that runs through this book, is that how can we be a pattern interrupt? Because over on the left, if someone says, hey, you were supposed to be here, don't blame me, it wasn't my fault. Well, I was standing out here, get off do you see how it actually escalates the situation? So over on the right, when we go to the A train or any of these other responses we're going to recommend, it really does. Well, Elvis said it best. He said, when things go wrong, don't go with them. When things go wrong, instead of going with them, we're going to figure out how to make them right.
Here's another tough one you talk about, and you're so good at explaining this, you get right to it. But what are some ways we can motivate people to stop talking, to listen, and just to see another point of view, right? They might be on some train and we want them to just kind of sit and consider another point. That can be hard when someone's really passionate about something. And in this day and age, wow, right? We got a lot of that. So what are some tips and ways we can think about that scenario?
Well, let's use the example. Someone accuses us of something that's not true. I was speaking at a women's leadership conference, and a woman raised her hand and said, "Sam, why are women so catty?" Well, I knew that if I denied that or argued with that, well, then, that would not help. That would hurt. So instead, I pulled a Don Draper. Don Draper said, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. So I said, you know what I found? I think women are real champions of each other. I wouldn't. And so if someone makes an accusation, you don't care about your customers. We do too care about our customers. Now we're arguing with our customers about whether we care about our customers. So over on the left, do not deny negative accusations. Over on the right, use these 4 words. What do you mean? What do you mean? Well, I left 3 messages and no one's called back. You don't love me anymore. I do too. How many? No. What do you mean? It actually reveals the real issue. We can address that instead of reacting to the attack.
Right. That attack of like, well, you don't love me. And it's great to be like, well, what do you mean by that? And then the person's gonna be like, well, because you didn't put the dishes away. There's going to be like a specific, and then that's what you're getting to. You're getting to, well, let's break it down and get to like, what are you really saying that you're upset about that then made you transfer it into an overall, you don't love me, because there's specifics there. And I love that you're getting down to clarification, which is what that is, right?
Exactly. This is, in fact, do you want to know one of my favorite examples of how to turn a conflict into a clarifying conversation?
Love it. Yep.
Well, there was a young woman, and she has learning disabilities. And she finally, after trying a lot, got a job at Salvation Army. She was very proud because her manager, after a year, said she was up for promotion. Well, the very next day, her manager told her she was in danger of getting fired. Well, now, before, Bethany would have dissolved in tears. She may have quit on the spot. She certainly would have gone home. She would have rehashed how unfair this was. She couldn't believe it. She could have fallen into a depression. However, her therapist had taught her 6 words on how to have a clarifying conversation. She went back to her boss the next day and she said, "Could you please help me understand how I was up for promotion 2 days ago, and then you're threatening to fire me yesterday?" Those words, "Could you please help me understand?" Her manager explained that a customer had complained. Bethany remembered the situation. He had tried to return a mattress that was used with the cover off. She needed to explain the policy. Once the manager found out what was really going on, apologized to Bethany and actually gave her the promotion she deserved. That's because she had a clarifying conversation instead of seeing this as a hard conversation or conflict that she was going to avoid.
Or unnecessarily getting fired when it's not warranted. And so she's also that's self-preservation as well, to do that clarifying conversation in that scenario.
Boy, Elle, you just said something so important. And my dentist has a little sign in his office that says the 6 most dangerous words are, "Maybe it will go away."
Yeah, well, especially for dental work. Yeah.
And with conflicts, when people are conflict averse, a lot of times they just hope it will go away. They're just going to avoid that person. They're not going to bring it up. Well, that makes it worse. And if we see it as an honest conversation, not a hard conversation, and if we ask, "Could you please help me understand?" or "Can we please revisit this?" or "I've been wondering why," notice we're asking, we're not accusing.
Yeah, questions and tone, so important in these scenarios. So let's just talk about bullies for a second. I mean, in my life, I have found a couple of things. First of all, when you are confident and you exude it because you truly are confident, you don't really get bullied that often because you're not the heat-seeking missile of like weakness that they're looking for. That's one. The other thing that I've noticed is whenever someone has tried to bully me, and I call them on it directly, immediately in that scenario, they instantly regret it. The bully, when you call them on their shit, in my experience, always backs down. They are not used to it. And if you forcefully do it, you can get it away. In fact, the times when I've tried to be bullied and I was forcefully like, just nope, not accepting it, they kissed my ass. Suddenly they're like, oh, you're an amazing person. Like, oh, look at you. Like they're now, the tables have turned. So talk to us about how we can hold bullies accountable for unacceptable behavior. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, this happens with adults all the time. It happens in the workplace. It's not just kids on the playground. I think adult bullying is even worse, to be honest with you, sometimes, because there's really no excuse for it. When we're talking about kids that are uncoached, it makes more sense.
Boy, Elle, you just gave a masterclass in how to deal with bullies, because I wrote a whole book called Take the Bully by the Horns. And the vast majority of people, we've been taught to turn the other cheek, right? It's like, actually, we tell kids, like someone's picking on them, well, just avoid them, That teaches something that's called learned helplessness. Or we think we'll be nice to the bully, they'll be nice to us. Or we need to understand they have a dysfunctional upbringing and it's not their fault, and put ourselves in their shoes. What I found is that 95% of people really care what's fair. They have a conscience, they self-correct, they self-reflect, they actually want a win-win, they want to cooperate. Then there's 5%ers, which are bullies or sociopaths or narcissists. They don't want a win-win, they want to win. They don't want to cooperate, they want to control. So what you did is you reversed the risk-reward ratio, right? Is that if bullies can get away with it, it's working. They're going to keep doing it. When someone does what I call do the you, we've been told to use I phrases. I don't think that's nice. I don't like to be talked to in that tone of voice. Well, bullies, they're thinking, good. The whole goal was to have you not like it. Yeah. So that backfires. So instead, you back off. That's enough. And Elle, it sounds like you are a master in understanding that keeps the attention where it belongs, which is on their inappropriate behavior instead of our reaction to it.
Absolutely. And this is, there could be like subtle bullying and all of that kind of stuff. I love that. Yeah. And everyone grab that book. I love the title of that book as well. Let's get into a little bit more about confidence. So whether women or men in business, being more confident in meetings and interviews when networking, clearly a lot of this is, I'm sure, as you know, of course, body language, right? Sometimes they'll say, like sit up straight or take up more space at the table, have a legal pad, have a little bit of a power presence. So those are some ways we can embody it. But aside from that, or on top of that, what are ways that we can think about tips to become more confident in meetings and things like this when maybe that's not our wheelhouse and we don't feel very strong there?
So I agree that it's important to tower instead of cower. We actually go back to the bully behavior is that bullies actually, as you said, they look for that concave posture. They look for shoulders, hunched over, the kind of meek look, etc., which says like, I'm afraid of you. And it actually encourages bullying. And when we pick up our shoulders and roll them back, when we put our feet shoulder width apart, that's an athletic stance that connotes I can take care of myself. So if we sit tall at meetings or on Zoom calls, it matters. Here's what I think even matters more. Anxiety is defined in 2 words, not knowing. And if we walk into an important job interview and we don't know what we're going to be asked and we don't know what we're going to say, we're in a state of anxiety. If we walk into a high stakes presentation and we don't know what the first 60 seconds are going to be, we're in a state of anxiety. So one of the things I do when I work with clients is what's going to be your first 60 seconds? What are you going to do? Is so compelling, is so convincing, so curiosity causing that people's eyebrows are going to go up and they're going to want to know more. Because if you've got that 60 seconds down, you can go anywhere, anytime with confidence. Want an example of that, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was the pitch coach for Springboard Enterprises, which has helped women entrepreneurs generate $26 billion in funding valuation. So One of my clients came to me. She said, Sam, I got good news. I got bad news. I said, what's the good news? She said, well, I'm speaking in front of a room full of investors. I said, that's fantastic. What's the bad news? She said, I'm going at 2:30 in the afternoon and I only have 10 minutes. She said, you can't say anything in 10 minutes. I said, Kathleen, you don't have 10 minutes. You've got 60 seconds.
Right.
Well, here's the 60-second opening we came up with that helped her win millions in funding. And she was Business Week's most promising social entrepreneur that year. Ready? 60-second opening?
Can't wait.
Okay. Did you know there are 1.8 billion vaccinations given every year? Did you know up to a third of them are given with used needles? Did you know we're spreading and perpetuating the very diseases we're trying to prevent? Imagine if there were a painless one-use needle for a fraction of the current cost. You don't have to imagine it. We're doing it. She's off and running. Now, do you know how, and it's Kathleen Callender of PharmaJet, do you know how she used to open up her presentations, her pitches, her elevator speeches? By explaining that PharmaJet was a medical delivery device for subcutaneous inoculation. It's a what?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm already lost. I'm already sleeping. Yeah.
There you go.
You know, what you said is so true because, you know, I've been speaking for a while, and I remember one time I had to go speak in front of an audience, and the person who was speaking before me was boring and putting everyone to sleep. And I thought, oh shit, I've got to go up there now and wake up a 5 o'clock audience after they've been. And you're right. If you have a powerful opener, 60 seconds, you've already blown in there with confidence and everything is smooth and you've got everyone's attention. And in that particular moment, when I knew people were falling asleep, I knew I had to just come out real high energy and capture their attention right away. And I did, but it was a conscious thing backstage, knowing the situation. But what you're talking about is it's like, if you can get a good 60 seconds together, then the rest of your presentation is going to go great. You've already impressed everybody. They're willing to listen to what you have to say.
And here's another example, because Richard Branson said time is the new money, and I think that time is the new trust. And if we want people to give us their attention, then they've got to trust we're going to be a good use of their attention. So here's another 60-second opening that turned a very skeptical me into someone 100% on board. So I was judging something called the Dolphin Tank, which is kind of like a kinder, gentler version of the Shark Tank. And I looked at the business plans the night before, and this woman was trying to get funding for a hook you put your purse on in your car. And I'm thinking, really? Elle, she was brilliant, though, because this was at the Long Beach Convention Center. There was a ballroom that could have sat 5,000 people. There's maybe 500 people in it. She went last, and so people kind of weren't even paying attention. She hauled a full-size car seat to the front of that ballroom. You should have seen those heads snapping up. And then she put her purse and she put her phone on the car seat, and then she grabbed like an imaginary driving wheel and she starts driving. Here's what she said. Have you ever been driving along? You had to stop all of a sudden. Your purse fell off the seat. You're scrambling around trying to retrieve it. Imagine never having to worry about that again. A man in the audience stood up. He said, I'll take two, one for my wife and one for my daughter. She went from really to I'll take two in 30 seconds because she showed the problem she solved. She asked, have you ever questions that put us in that situation? We didn't want that to happen again. We decided what she wanted or what she was selling all in 30 seconds.
I love that. And as you were saying it, every woman listening who uses the purse is like, of course, yes, this is a problem. This happens all the time. You stop suddenly and the shit's all now on the floor and you're reaching for so what a perfect way to be relatable. And also I like the use of the props there. In that case, that's a perfect use of props.
You know, if they're not looking, they're not listening. And like I said, she went last. It was the afternoon. People were talking with their neighbor, checking email, etc. So when we use a prop, how can we get their eyes and how can we get their eyebrows up? Because if we want them to be interested, eyebrows up, like right now, crunch your eyebrows. See, it's like we're confused, we don't get it, and confused people don't say yes. Mm-hmm. And if we're sharing our idea and people's eyebrows are unmoved, it means they're unmoved or they've had Botox. Now, right now, lift your eyebrows if you would. Do you feel intrigued, curious, like you want to know more? That means we just got what we care about in your mental door.
I love it. I want to just get back to the word and the concept of eggshells. I remember like 20 years ago, I was dating a person who was very moody. I felt like I was walking on eggshells all the time, that choked up feeling in your throat because, they're putting you on edge. And at the time I didn't speak up. And I remember when I broke up and I was talking to my dad at the time, and he said, well, why did you break up? And I said, I felt like I had to walk on eggshells. He said, say no more. Don't you ever walk on eggshells around anyone. So how can you help us if we're out there and we're dealing with someone who can be moody, a little snippy? Those people, again, you got to walk on eggshells. You're not sure how they're going to be approached. I mean, first of all, I would say don't hang out with those people if possible. I choose not to hang out with people like that in life. But let's say we have that situation. How can someone address that directly with the person? I mean, instead of being like, you're a fucking moody asshole and I'm tired of watching you. That's a little harsh. But how can we kind of get out of it or stop it when it's happening to, because sometimes with behaviors with a person, whether it's a relationship, a business partner, it doesn't matter who it is. If the behavior happens, we can say something. If it keeps happening, then at some point we can go, hey, look, this has been a continued problem. I've asked you to stop speaking to me in this way, and it continues. So, we're done because you've at least said something, right? So how can we, in a situation where we're on eggshells, address it? How can we call a person on that?
Well, we named the game. It's, one of the things we can say, well, here are several examples. Number one is like, it looks like you've had a bad day at work, and it's not fair to take it out on me because you've had a bad day. Or if we're dealing with a salesperson who's really pushy, we can say, you're not trying to rush me into a decision here. Not anymore. They're not. If we're a bartender, it's like, you're not asking for a free drink, are you? Not anymore. They're not. It's like policemen say this is like, you're not bribing a police officer. Right. See, we ask ourselves, what is happening here? And then we say it, because when we name the game, we neutralize it. In fact, Melissa Rivers is Joan Rivers' daughter. And she said, my mother was a travel agent for guilt trips. And one of the things she learned to say was that if her mom started to make her feel bad about something, she would say, oh, guilt. That doesn't work with me anymore. What else you got? And you see, when you name the game, you bring it into the light, and often that neutralizes it.
So how with someone who might be moody or someone who's displaying this behavior and we're feeling like we're on eggshells and we've got to we're bearing the brunt of somebody's bad mood or bad day and we don't like that scenario, how do we call it and name that in that moment? Do we say, hey, listen, I'm walking on eggshells here, or you're inconsistently unapproachable, or what are some ways we could address that?
Well, the first thing you said that was kind of a red flag, Elle, is this a pattern, right? I mean, if someone is normally loving or kind or, easy to get along with, and this is like an aberration, this is different from their behavior, then it's probably situational, right? So then we can say, has it been one of those kind of days? Because they may say, oh my gosh, yes, it's like my boss called me on the carpet. So do you see how just that phrase, has it been one of those kinds of days, can often bring up what's really going on to cause this person to behave this way. If it's a pattern, that's a whole different story. And then it's like, we use their name. So let's say their name is Bob. Bob, it looks like perhaps this has been one of those kinds of days. I'm going to give you some space tonight, is I'm going out to the movie with my friends, or I'm going to go read a book, or I'm going to go this. It's like we mention it and then we remove ourselves from it. Because if we try too hard to draw them out, right, rewarded behavior gets repeated. Placating them or trying to pull them out is in a way going, whatever you're doing, it's working. Keep doing it. And that's not the message we want to send.
Oh, that's so good. You just just summed that up perfectly. I love that, because also that would be a little bit of people pleasing behavior. That would be us trying to avoid conflict. Oh, they're moody. I don't want to, I gotta dance around this. And usually those people who are dealing with like moody people or people like this, you always hear them say stuff like, no, you understand. Like, I know how to handle them. And you're like, do you? Do you? Because it's not looking like it's working very well. You don't have control. That is also a form of bullying, right? When someone's using their bad day and taking it out on you, if you, again, like you said, you're trying to pull it out, I agree with like, hey, calling it out, removing yourself, because you keep doing that and it shows the person they're not going to get sympathy or be able to be a victim around that, and you're not going to accept it. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about how we can set an example of respect that inspires other people in kind. I mean, we always heard the thing, right? Like, you teach people how to treat you. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Let's go back to being a pattern interrupt. So say something's gone wrong. Somebody's dropped the ball on something. The blaming has begun. Well, you were the one who, don't look at me. I gotta, over on the left, put the words find fault. And if people are blaming or pointing fingers, etc., it's often who's to blame, who started it, who is responsible for it. That doesn't serve any good purpose. So we're literally, do you play sports by any chance?
I do. Yes, I do.
Good. What kind of sports?
Well, I used to play a lot of sports when I was younger, like team sports, and I still swim and do other things. I'm going to even play ping pong and occasionally. So sometimes competitive, sometimes not, but I've been an athlete my life. So yeah.
Okay. Well, you probably remember those days in team sports. If the players are getting into it, what does the referee do? Time out, right?
Yeah.
If people are getting into it, whether it's in your home or whether it's in a meeting, don't try and talk over them, because the voice of reason will get drowned out in the commotion. Instead, do a physical pattern interrupt. Make a T with your hand, or hold your hand up and out like a policeman would, and said, hey, time out. And then say, this won't help, or say, let's not do this. We could go back and forth about who dropped the ball on this, and it's not going to undo it. Instead, and then we switch them to finding solutions instead of finding fault. So when we say this won't help or let's not do this, that, along with the physical pattern interrupt, shifts people from trying to give blame to what can be done to prevent this from happening again, or to handle it more effectively in the future.
How, let's in sort of, as we're winding down here, I'd love to hear some more examples from your life of coaching with people, working with people, on some 180s from poor communication in situations to really mastering it, or some other examples that may just really shed light on this topic for us.
This is one of my favorite examples, because it really shows the ripple effect of words, is that words matter, every one of them. And hopefully this book, Talking on Eggshells, gives us ways to be more mindful about using words that help instead of hurt. So here's the story. I'm in New York. I'm visiting my son, Andrew, and his 1-year-old son, Hero, is crawling across the floor. He hauls himself up on a guitar stand and he starts banging on the strings. Now, over on the left, Andrew could have yelled no. He could have said, stop banging on the strings. He could have yanked the guitar away, all which would have made Hero feel bad. Instead, he said one word. Do you know what it was? Gentle. And I saw Hero's face transform in front of me, and he reached back to the guitar and went strum, strum, strum. There were some bells up on the window. He reached up, ring, ring, ring. And in that moment, Hero made music, and it was because Andrew shaped his behavior instead of shamed it. He coached it instead of criticized it, which meant that Hero learned from that situation instead of losing face. My dad used to tell me we can't motivate people to do better by making him feel bad. And over on the left, let's get rid of the words stop and should. Because if we said you should have called, if you're going to, you should have told, you should have been more careful, or you should stop doing that, we actually reinforce the very behavior we don't want. Over on the right, what do we want people to start? What's the desired behavior instead of the dreaded? What is a word that helps him do something differently? Because the more we tell someone, stop interrupting me, don't get mad, stop hitting your sister, don't swear, etc., the more we're actually reinforcing the very thing we don't want. We're making people feel bad, and we're not motivating them or showing them how to do it better. Over on the right, the words of what we do want: remember your backpack instead of forget it. It's let me finish instead of stop interrupting me. Give your sister space instead of stop hitting your sister, etc.
Those are great parenting adjustments. I love that. So aside from your book talking on eggshells, that's available now. And of course, we'll put all of the links to connect with you in the show notes, and everyone can go to samhorn, SAMHORN.com. You have courses, you do consulting and speaking. Let's talk about some of the courses. How can we benefit from your work over all of these years?
Well, thank you first for asking. Maybe a good starting point is to see my TEDx talk. Is that I actually share that did you know technique in the TEDx talk. And I also share a technique about how never to give another elevator speech and what to say instead. So they can check out my TEDx talks. I hope they'll follow me on LinkedIn, because I blog a lot there about words to lose and words to use. And also about, I help people get their books out of their head and into the world. So if you have an idea or experience or a story to tell, you think it might add value, then one of the programs I do is to help you crystallize a quality idea that hasn't been said before, and how to put that in a TEDx talk or a book or a program that will make a positive difference for all involved, including you.
Yeah, and that's so great and so encouraging. And that's So You Want to Write a Book course. Any last words or thoughts or stories you'd like to leave our audience with before we go today?
Mother Teresa said, the world is full of good people. If you can't find one, be one. And I honestly, if there's a river that runs through my books, because I've written Tung Fu and I've written Pop and I've written Got Your Attention and Someday Is Not a Day in the Week, it is that on a daily basis, we have a choice of how we show up. And we will never, ever regret acting in integrity and treating people with respect, because when we do that, when it's all over and we're looking back, I think we will not have regrets. And I think that most of the time when we treat people with respect, they're motivated to respond literally and figuratively in kind.
I love that. Everybody go to samhorn.com. Get her new amazing book. And for everyone else, thank you so much for joining us, Sam. And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.